Hi, my name's Lindsay, and just over 20 years ago I trained to be a journalist. I chose to do this because I love asking questions and finding out about other people's lives.
I've worked for newspapers, written stories for magazines and websites, and made lots of TV programmes. Over the years, I've interviewed all sorts of people, from celebrities and politicians to lots and lots of so-called ordinary people with extraordinary stories. An example that stands out is a mum whose charity, Sal's Shoes, has given away 1 million pairs of shoes to barefoot children in 38 different countries. Lots of people have fascinating stories, and sometimes we don't get round to asking the people we know about their lives when they were younger. But now, during this time of social isolation, when we have to stay at home almost all day and we can't see our family members who live elsewhere, this could be an ideal time to find out about the lives of our grandparents, our aunts and uncles and family members.
In this tutorial, I'll give you a few tips on how to ask really good questions so you can get a real insight into the lives of your loved ones.
Last year, I ran a project with school children, teaching them to interview family members, carers and family friends, and they found out some amazing stories, including grandparents who'd been evacuated to the countryside during World War II, who'd fled to safety from countries where there were wars, and who'd grown up in countries where there was no running water in their homes.
All you need to do is have a think about a family member or a family friend who might have told you an interesting story. It might have been when they were growing up many decades ago, or it could have been when they were living in another country.
Make sure if you're under 18 to ask your parents or carer for their permission before you text or email or call a family friend or family member to see if they'd like to do an interview about their lives. The chances are whoever you'll ask will agree, as people love to tell stories about things that have happened to them. Before you pick up the phone, it's important to write down some questions to ask. It's a good idea to think about open questions instead of closed questions. So an open question might be, where and when were you born? And a closed question might be, do you like dogs? Closed questions get yes or no answers, and they're not much good for interviews. You might want to get a pen and paper ready, or you can click on the link below to download these questions afterwards. You'll likely want to ask some questions about your interviewee's early life, such as where and when were you born, and where did you grow up and what was it like there. It would also be interesting to ask a few questions about your family member or family friend's childhood, such as, tell me about your childhood. Who and what did you play with? What were the best things and the worst things about your childhood? Which childhood memories stand out most to you? Questions about school days are likely to offer some fascinating answers, such as, what were your primary school days like? And what were your secondary school days like? Do you have any funny stories from school? If your family member or family friend is from another place or another country, it will be really interesting to find out more about their life there. You could ask questions such as, tell me about another country or a place that you've lived in. What was it like there? What do you remember most about being there? What are the main differences between life in your home country and life here? What do you miss most and least about your home country? When did you come to Britain and why? If you're interviewing someone who's travelled somewhere interesting, perhaps for their job or for holidays, you could ask them questions about that journey, including, tell me about an amazing journey you've been on. Where did you go and when? What do you remember most about it? And what were the best and worst parts of it? For someone who's moved from one country to another or one place to another, you could ask them about the differences. For example, what did you like most and least when you first arrived in the UK? When did you come to your city and why? And how has life changed here over the years? If you're interviewing your grandparents or your parents or another person, you might want to know how they met. So you could ask, tell me how you met grandma or granddad or your wife or your husband. What was your wedding like? Tell me about your children and what they were like when they were little. What are your strongest memories of those times? Another area where good stories come up is often at work, so you could ask the person you're interviewing about their job or the jobs they do or did. Questions could include, tell me about the work or the voluntary work that you've done. What have you enjoyed most about it? Which memories from work stand out most to you? Towards the end of your interview, it's good to ask some reflection questions, such as, how different was life when you were growing up to life now? What do you miss most about the past? And finally, you could ask some thought-provoking and summing up questions like, what is your message to others? Is there anything else you'd like to tell me about your life? You can find all these questions by clicking the link below on my Facebook page, Small World Tutorials. Before you phone up your relative and fire off these questions, I've got a few last tips. Make sure you've arranged a good time with the person you're going to phone. On the day, find somewhere comfortable to sit. Have everything you need beside you, a pen and paper, a drink of water and the phone. Remember to ask clear questions. Don't interrupt, but you can prompt if someone forgets the question. At the end, you can ask a few questions to clarify anything you didn't understand. Finally, decide whether you want to do this interview with someone who lives in your home, or over the phone or on a video call. You also need to decide if you want to write down the person's answers, record them as a voice recording, or record a video, which you can even do via Zoom. Then tune in to watch my tutorials on how to do these things.